Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds.
Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Many of us have those stubborn pounds that seem impossible to lose, no matter how good we eat or how hard we work out. My solution is PlushCare. PlushCare is a leading telehealth provider with doctors who are there for you day and night to partner with you in your weight loss journey. They can prescribe FDA-approved weight loss medications like Wegovy and Zepbound for those who qualify. Plus, they accept most insurance plans. To get started, visit plushcare.com/weightloss. That's plushcare.com/weightloss.
Okay, guys, welcome to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones with me, your podcast host, Tony Evans. Into the wonderful, wonderful world of Black Sabbath again we dive. Now, this one is, I'm going in no notes on this one, so this is going to be an off the top of the head chit chat. So I have done research for this, but I don't really need to because I've got all this information that comes with this lovely box set. Now, the reason you're going to say, oh no, you've already talked to Tony Martin and you've already talked about Headless Cross. Yes, I have, but that was when I could only get it on streaming, not on streaming, on YouTube illegally. Now I own a copy, thank goodness, of it, and all of the 89 to 95 era Tony Martin albums in this delicious, lovely box set that came out on the 31st of May 2024. Listening to this in the future, it's available on a vinyl box set and a CD box set. Now I've got both of them. I would like myself to have a tape option if there was. That's just because I'm a music nerd, likes to collect this sort of stuff. But it isn't going to be just about the box set itself. It's going to be about the albums within the box set, of course. But it a little bit of back story. So those that are new to the show won't know this. Those are experienced listeners to HMT will know about this, hopefully, or they can remember, because I can barely remember myself. So, way back in the midst of time, 1988, 89, around that period, a young me had left school and was working. Now, I didn't have much money in my pocket because I wasn't earning a lot. I think at one point I was earning £1.65 an hour. Do you know, that's, thought of it, it's just ridiculous, isn't it? But now, hey, it's what it was back then. And so I had 60 quid in my pocket at the end of the week, and I had to pay rent to my mum for board, and I had to pay for my bus pass to get to college because I decided to go back to art college when I left school, and then I had just a few pounds left in my pocket. And that particular year, Black Sabbath's Headless Cross had come out, and this is pre-internet, okay? I came across this song on Top of the Pops. It was the first time I'd heard it, so it was on the, sort of the week of release. It didn't do hugely well in the charts, so it wasn't one of those top 10 singles. It was one of the sort of the era in Top of the Pops, if anyone knows it, where they were trying to sort of encourage outside the top 40 singles for the show. So there was more of a mix of audience participation because they wanted people that listened to that music as not just the top 40 listeners. And I watched it and I saw it and I heard this voice. Now I'd been listening to Black Sabbath since I was a very young boy because of my brothers. So it was not that I didn't know who the band was or anything like that. I was not a huge fan of the Dio voice, even though Tony Martin does sound a bit like Dio. I was more an Aussie man, Aussie all the way through. Paranoid, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, Black Sabbath, all of the classic albums. Volume 4, all that, which I talked about before. And when this came on, I was like, it would now the time and space in the UK in 89, 90, around 88, 89, 90, around that time, there wasn't a lot of heavy metal in the eye. Of course, you had your Metallicas, but they were still underground. Iron Maiden were bubbling around, but they were going through their own problems. There was very little new traditional heavy metal coming out. There was a lot of new metal-y stuff and some really good. I went to some absolutely amazing early death metal album concerts like Deicide and Carcass and things like that. There was some good doom around, but there was very little traditional heavy metal. Even Judas Priest was a little bit quiet around that period of time. So when it came out on Top of the Pops, because you never saw heavy rock on Top of the Pops, so you just did not see heavy metal on Top of the Pops. I had been deeply going to a very deep dive into my Marillion phase, so I was really prog headying. I was getting very heavy in the prog, deep in the prog then, and that's a great thing. Don't get me wrong, I love it. It's me. I love it. It's part of my musical landscape. But it was really nice then to see this on Top of the Pops. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I went and bought the single, physical single from Our Price and Brent Cross, which is in North London, big shopping centre. Those in North London will know what I'm talking about. And Our Price, I think, is gone now, but it used to be the only place you could buy records locally, to me anyway, that wasn't secondhand. And then, of course, subsequently, I bought the album on, I think I bought it on vinyl. I did have it on vinyl for a little while. That I think got lost in, I don't know, sort of taking them to parties. A lot of records got lost in my time, but I had it on cassette, definitely had it on cassette, which I had for a very long time. I used to play that I think I played that till the tape was thin, on my brother's hand-me-down first generation Sony Walkman, the one about the size of a small car. But the sound was amazing. Anywho, Fish had released that particular year, had released Vigil in the Wilderness of Mirrors, his first solo album. And I had 20 quid in my pocket after paying all the expenses. And I went to the Hammersmith Odeon, and I went to the, as you did then, you didn't buy online or anything like that. I went to the actual Hammersmith Odeon, which is now like some kind of stupid name like the Apollo, I don't know what it is, but it's the Odeon to me. Went there and I bought tickets to see Fish. I bought my tickets, there were stall tickets, they were £10. And I turned around, and as I turned around, right on the side wall, as I was walking out of the ticket area, was a poster for Headless Cross. And it was £10.50, I think it was. And I had like £11 left in it for the world for that week. And I just turned back round and I said, as you would say now, take my money, right? I gave him the money and I bought my ticket. And to say that moment was life-changing for me is slightly understating it, to be fair. That's why this box set reissue is so important to me. I went and saw Fish, and it was brilliant, and it was he's such a theatrical performer. He came out in a ski mask, like a balaclava ski mask kind of thing, like a terrorist sort of thing, and he slid out of this paper circle down a slide and started off with I think it was with, if I remember right, he opened with Cliche, I think. Anyway, I could be wrong, but that, anyway, it was an amazing performance. I bloody loved it. It was brilliant. I saw him again consequently the following sort of 6 months later again, back at the Odeon. I had free tickets. I won them on a radio show, which was great, and a signed T-shirt, which I really don't have anymore, which is annoying. Anywho, that's a different story. But so I remember I'd bought a ticket then the following week or so to go to Donington that year. I went and lashed out on a second-hand biker's jacket because I didn't want a brand new shiny squeaky leather jacket. Like, it just wasn't me, but I really wanted that. I wanted a leather jacket. That was the look I was going for. I had long hair, much to my length now, but a bit longer. I could almost sit on my hair back then. I had 2 silver rings, skulls and eye rings and all sorts of, all on every finger. I remember my old boss, he said to me, "Get your hair cut. I'll pay to get your hair cut." And he gave me a £10 note, and I went to the hairdressers next door, and they took off like half, like 2 or 3 millimeters, just basically to the bottom. I took it back in. He said, "You didn't get your hair cut." And I said, "I did," and I showed him the trimmings on my hand. I was a bit cheeky back then, and he laughed, but I don't think he was overly impressed. I gave him his £10 back because the hairdresser didn't charge me anything. That's all right. But so I had that look, and that was my look, and the sort of tight blue jeans, and I didn't really wear a lot of black jeans back then. And then sort of like the cowboy boots. I don't know what I was going through my mind then, but that's what I was doing. And I'd gone and seen, I got and bought that particular time as well. I remember buying Love in an Elevator by Aerosmith and Whitesnake's album, because I saw Whitesnake headline Donington that year. I went to Donington a few times afterwards, and before, but that was the year I went. That particular year I remember vividly, because there's lots of funny stories about that one. Getting off with an American student at the back of the bus on the way to the festival was funny. And anyway, it was funny at the moment, at the time. I don't know why it was funny, but it was funny to me when I look back at it. Fumbling young man. I was 17, Anyway, side note. So, turned up. I vividly remember being very excited. I took the day off from work, the night, because I used to work nights, and I went on the train. And where I am from Hendon to Hammersmith is quite a bit of a journey. Not really, but it felt like, as a young person living in London, it felt like forever in a way. And we got there, and it was packed full of people. There was old hardcore Sabbath fans, new Sabbath fans. I mean, this is a phase of Sabbath that people did really frown upon. It wasn't Ozzy, it wasn't Dio, it wasn't selling massive records. So you had your hardcore fans, and yet me, a mix of both. And I had at that time, because I only just started. I wasn't drinking because I was too young. Well, I was drinking, but I wasn't drinking legally. So I had a shitload of Coca-Cola and a load of chocolate M&Ms, like a truckload. And you can imagine what that mix does to you when you're headbanging furiously at a Black Sabbath concert. I was at the back of the gig, sort of. I was in the stall. I was in the balcony, about 4 rows back from the front of the balcony. And I started feeling, it was about, almost towards the end of the gig, I started feeling really slightly unwell. I thought, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna be sick. So I run out back to the toilets, which, if everyone's been there, they're at the back behind the balcony. There's a corridor and there's a toilet there. And there's me chundering away, giving it rice, giving it, Krakatoa and singing, yodeling, and all the towns of North Wales. And, playing with go, all that stuff. I was going for it. And this old dude, and I'll never forget him, today I die, head up came up from the basin, and I looked over, and there was this guy in really worn denim. He was probably about 60 then. And he goes, "It's a drugs, man. Never mix your drugs, man." And I couldn't turn around to him and say, "No, it was the M&Ms." So I just went, "Yeah." And I sort of walked off mysteriously back into the venue. And when I got back in, just as I got in, Brian May came on, because Brian May played on one of the tracks on Headless Cross. As if you want to know about that, go back to my episode about Headless Cross and have a listen to it. It will tell you in detail. And then also on came Geezer Butler. It was an absolute rip-roaring experience, and it was life changing for me. After that, I was hungry, really hungry for that kind of music and that kind of experience again. And funny enough, many years later, I was at a Witch Skull concert here in Canberra. Now, Witch Skull, I've also reviewed their album. They're friends of mine. They're, in my opinion, the world's premier doom band. They call themselves stoner doom, sludge doom. I think it's just doom. Absolutely brilliant. They've been, in all sorts of bands, Armored Angel and all sorts of things for years. And I was talking to Joel, the drummer, and he was at that gig. So he had gone to England to visit family, and he was at the front. I was further back. What a crazy world! What a crazy small world, right? Anyway, yeah, changed my mind. Absolutely changed the way that I looked at going to see live music and what I was looking for, and it really absolutely cemented within me that if I want to stay, it felt like I would stay young forever if this music was with me forever. And that's how I genuinely feel. I know it sounds really wanky, right? But the elixir of youth is not, it's not some potion. It's not some diet. It's not some meditation. It's not some wacky religion. It is really rock and roll. It's the burning fire that keeps the youth inside you alive. It does for me. And I think that it doesn't have to be rock and roll as in Chuck Berry. Any kind of music that gets you a spark or moving. It could be classical, it could be rap, it could be whatever. But it's that spark of music. It's the we've been making music of some kind for millennia, since we could hit a stick against a rock, or howl at the moon, or whatever we did. We would make some noise, and it would please us. And this is what it is. This is why it is the source of eternal life, I think. Anyway, now I've given you a backstory of why I love that album. Okay, so you can understand why. And when I left it in the UK and came to Australia and actually didn't bring it with me, because I actually couldn't. I don't know if I could bring it with me. I think I'd lost it sometime before we decided to come to Australia. Before I even met my wife, I think I lost it sometime then. Went to a lot of parties in my youth that I would take records and then get drunk and probably forget to take them home, Anyway, that's by the by. So it means a lot to me. And this box set, particularly in its packaging, which we'll talk about in the second half, is stunning. There's some beautiful quotes which I'm going to read out to you. I'm going to go over each album roughly. I was going to review Cross Purposes on the second part of this show, and I did say it on my TikTok video, but I've changed my mind, and I'm allowed to do that. I'm going to review Cross Purposes separately. I just want to talk about the packaging, the albums, things like that. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, there'll be more insights, because there's some beautiful insights in this book that comes with it. And if you're interested in that, please stick around. If you haven't listened to any of these albums yet, that's Headless Cross, TYR, Cross Purposes, and Forbidden. If you haven't listened to any of those, you can now, because they're on every streaming platform, which is absolutely dangerous for me, because I just keep going back to them when I'm going for a walk, I'm on the way to work. Brilliant. So you don't have to try and hunt around for some dodgy YouTube rip anymore. So this now is a brilliant package. So see you on the other side, and we're going through this wonderful box set, the Tony Iommi and Tony Martin, too many Tonys, the Tony Martin era. It's not all of the Tony Martin albums, of course, but it's the main ones. It's 89 to 95. Anno, Domini, the album, a box set is called. It's absolutely beautiful. Yeah. Anyway, talk to you on the side, guys. Bye for now.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds.
Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous 2-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Ready to pop the question and take advantage of 30% off? The jewelers at BlueNile.com have got sparkle down to a science with beautiful lab-grown diamonds worthy of your most brilliant moments. Their lab-grown diamonds are independently graded and guaranteed identical to natural diamonds. And they're ready to ship to your door. Go to BlueNile.com to get 30% off select lab-grown diamonds. That's BlueNile.com for 30% off lab-grown diamonds. BlueNile.com.
Hiring for your small business? If you're not looking for professionals on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. That's like looking for your car keys in a fish tank. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So start looking in the right place. With LinkedIn, you can hire professionals like a professional. Post your free job on linkedin.com/spoken today.
Hey everyone, I'm Craig Robinson, co-host of the Ways to Win podcast, alongside my good friend John Calipari. I've been on the go recently. Phoenix, Kansas City, Chicago. If you're like me and have a home but aren't always at home, you have an Airbnb. Hosting your home or a spare room is a very practical side hustle. If you live in a big game town, you can Airbnb your place for fans to stay in. Your home might be worth more than you think. Find out how much at airbnb.com/host.
Welcome back, guys, to part 2 of Heavy Metal Tones, the Anno Domini box set looky-atty thing. Now, if you don't know much about the Tony Martin era of Black Sabbath, I have discussed this. I have it on our show. If you go back maybe 50, 60 episodes, you're going to find my interview with Tony Martin himself. The audio is poor. I do apologize for that. There was something going on with my mic at the time. From my end, his is perfect, of course. And I also reviewed Headless Cross track for track and gave you a history of the album. So that will give you an idea of the Tony Martin era. So he's the second longest running member, a lead singer of the band. The most, in my opinion, underrated vocalist in the world of heavy metal particularly. He's a multi-instrumentalist. He can play guitar, he can play classical, he writes music, he's just, and he's got a set of lungs on him, a voice on him that is just so soulful and so beautiful and so heavy. You know, and you look back at the early days of him with Sabbath, and it was the late 80s, early 90s, remember? So it doesn't look like, you can't put that image of what metal is now, or even back before then to then. It was, there was dodgy haircuts, there was silly jackets, there's smog machines and big hairdos, and it was just the way it was. You cannot judge it. Don't look at that and go, oh, it looks a bit not for me. Wait till you just hear him sing. Of course, and in my opinion as well, I think this is one of Tony Iommi's best sets of albums of the modern era. Like his guitar work, particularly some of the triplets on the opening track of Cross Purposes, is just like, just gives me a shiver down my spine. Now, I've opened up the the CD box set, just because the vinyl one, which I've got here, you can hear me rubbing it, ASMR, is something I don't really want to open too often. And I have reverence for it in such a high order. I think it will come across in this program how much I revere this particular set of albums. And so it is like my holy grail. I actually had. I know I cried last week on the show, and I'm not worried about that. But when I did get my box set and I got it delivered, my wife picked it up from the record store. I'd ordered it, both sets. I genuinely couldn't wait to get home. I skipped I couldn't wait to get home. I had a tear in my eye. It was a long weekend, so we had a few days off and needed to get to grips with it again, the physical media. It's a lovely jet black box with nice sort of the symbols of the album covers on the front in sort of matte black. And in gold, you've got the Unk or the cross, and then Anno Domini 1989 to 1995. It's really lovely. Okay. So on the hype sticker, it says this is the CD box set. 4 CD Super Deluxe Edition featuring 3 newly remastered albums, 2024's Tony Iommi remix of Forbidden, 1989's Headless Cross Tour replica concert book, which I had it and I lost it, or it got ruined, or I put it on a wall. Who knows what I did with it? A 60-page book with photos, artwork, and liner notes. Headless Cross poster. So in the CD box set, you get obviously a small version of everything because it's a CD box set. In the vinyl, you get a full-size version of everything. But I remember vividly getting the tour program, because you did that then. I don't know what I wouldn't do it now. Actually, come to think of it, I wouldn't buy a tour program now, only because I've got to carry it home. Oh, I don't know why, but I just wouldn't. I'd get it ruined somehow. I know I would. Like, I remember because the gig was I believe was in April or August. It was an A word, one of those dates. And I had saved to buy merch, and I bought a tour t-shirt, which no longer exists, sadly, and program. I remember having the program because it just sat on my seat behind me, because you stood up to gigs at the Odeon. You didn't sit down. I mean, people sit down now, but we didn't sit down, and you stood up. Didn't matter if you had a seat, you stood up. And so it was sat on my seat. It's a really nice program, sort of dark blue. It's got Black Sabbath and a cross, the sort of Celtic cross. And it's got lovely, it's got the, Tour 89. It's got all the band in there. It's got Cozy Powell. It's got Tony Iommi, it's got Neil Murray on bass, Jeff Nichols, God rest his soul, on keyboards, Cozy Powell, God rest his soul, on drums. It's very 80s when you look at it, okay? But it's exactly what you'd expect. I mean, Cozy Powell's on the motorbike. I mean, that says it all, really. It's a really beautiful package. Lovely tour program, and I'm glad I've got a replica. Sad I don't have the original anymore, but hey, that's okay. I now have a copy of it, which is it's great. You also get this it comes with this really nice ribbon that allows you to pull all of the CDs out. Not the same with the vinyl box set, I have to say, which is a bit of an annoying. But in the CD one, you get a little ribbon so you can pull it out easily because it's quite a tight fit. The poster's really nice. So the poster is, you hear me unfolding it? Ooh. It's anyone knows the image, it's the classic. It will be the thumbnail. I think if it might be the thumbnail, depending, but I don't want to confuse people thinking it's Headless Cross program. So, but it's the Headless Cross tour picture that was on the CD, or the single and the cassette single, and the CD possibly. So it's the Celtic cross and a moon, like with clouds in front of it and rocks and all sorts of stuff. It's very apt for the album. Go listen to the album, please do so. And then now the CDs, there was some complaint when this came out that I read in some reviews, and I think it's absolutely pointless in making this complaint. Look, you're buying a box set that is people have been waiting for 30 years, and it's exactly how long we've all been waiting. And why aren't the CDs in a nice plastic boxes? Why are they in cardboard slip cases? Well, they do come in a cardboard slip case. They also come with a little plastic sleeve for the CD, so it won't scratch it. I like the fact they're in a cardboard slip case. Brings the cost down, and it's it's smaller as a package, and it's more. Let's be honest, it's more friendly to the environment, isn't it? Not vinyl is quite a toxic thing that we do to make records is not best for the environment. So these CD cases being paper, I don't mind. They've really nice matte card finish. It's got all the original artwork on them. With headless cross. So it has on the CD has a reason I bought the CD box set was because I want both sets anyway, because that's me. But on the CD, you get an extra bonus track on Headless Cross, one of them. So you get Cloak and Dagger, which was released as a single in Japan. You got Gates of Hell, Headless Cross, Devil a Daughter, When Death Calls, Killer in a Spirit Well, Call of the Wild, Black Moon, Nightwing, sorry, and Cloak and Dagger, which is the bonus track. And it's produced by Tony Iommi and Cozy Powell. So one of the greatest drummers who ever lived, and definitely one of the greatest guitarists on the face of the earth. What an amazing product. I stand by this album with all of my musical might. I really, really don't understand people who bag it out. It's not Aussie, it's not Dio. So what? You open your ears and listen to something. I mean, I must admit, I was that idiot. It's not Bruce Dickinson, it's Blaze Bayley. And what did I do? For years, I didn't enjoy or give myself the option to enjoy those albums. Now I listen to those albums on a regular rotation because of this show, because I gave myself another listen. And so it's a load of tosh. If you're a Black Sabbath fan, you're listening to this show and sort of like, what knuckles are white because you're so angry that it's not an Ozzy Osbourne album I'm talking about. Well, then maybe the show either will change your mind or go somewhere else, because clearly you aren't open-minded enough, and that's a worry, right? That's a real worry. You may not like the music. It might not be the kind of music you like. I don't particularly like Forbidden. In fact, it's my least favourite of all of the Tony Martin albums, but I'm going to have it. I'm not going to start shouting and people and going, oh, it's rubbish, I don't want to listen to it. No. There are bits on it which I actually adore. There are bits on it make me cringe, and it is the way it is. So Headless Cross, brilliant. And then we get TYR. This is the album that I missed out on seeing them again at the Odeon on this tour because I couldn't get out of work. And it was one of the last times that I let work get in the way. It's one of my favourite Sabbath albums outside of Headless Cross of the Martin era. Absolutely love it. It's got it's got a brilliant lineup on it. It's Cozy Powell on drums, Tony Iommi, it's got Tony Martin, and it's got Neil Murray on bass. Like really, and Jeff Nichols on keyboards. Just brilliant lineup, in my opinion. And the tracks you get on here are Anno Domini, as the box set, Anno Mundi, Lawmaker, Jerusalem, Sabbath Stones, Battle of TYR, Odin's Court, Valhalla, Feels Good to Me, and Heaven in Black. Now, that is also an absolute cracking album, which is so underrated. Genuinely, I think a lot of people think it's better than Headless Cross. I go in and out of phases with it. Headless Cross will always be my go-to, but I go in and out with it. I still absolutely adore it to bits. I really, really do. And I don't understand. I love both. I have trouble deciding which one I love. There's a great quote about when they were recording Headless Cross. There's a lot of lyrics because Tony Martin writes the lyrics. There was a lot of lyrics about death in that album, and Cozy Powell was they were in the middle of recording, and he stops and stands up behind the kit and says, "Hey Tony, I don't think there's enough death in this album." Which it's funny because a lot of people associate Black Sabbath with really black, heavy themes, but actually they don't really. A lot of their stuff is not as dark as you think it is at all. Compared to what people do now and the imagery they use now, it's like, I don't know, it's sort of mild, really. But yeah. Anyway, we then move on to Cross Purposes. Now, Cross Purposes is an album that I didn't appreciate, to be honest, as much as I do now, because I didn't have a physical copy of it. And it was quite hard to listen to in different versions of it. This one, again, these have all been remastered, by the way, by Tony Iommi. The sound is amazing. This is a bonus track on it. The bonus track on this one is What's the Use? Now, the track listing on it is Eyewitness, Cross of Thorns, Psychophobia, which I love the guitar in Psychophobia, Virtual Death, Immaculate Deception, Dying for Love, Back to Eden, The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, Cardinal Sin, Evil Eye, and that's What's the Use. Now, Evil Eye and What's the Use was released recently on the 24th of May as a single from this box set. And it was, of course, Headless Cross and... sorry, hang on, what was it? What was the other one that was released from this one? So Headless Cross and... wasn't it A Devil, a Daughter? Or was it TYR? Let me... 1 second. I have to pause to find that out. One moment. Headless Cross and Anno Mundi, sorry. I knew it, it left my brain. That was on the 22nd of March this year, and on the 24th of May, Evil Eye and Get a Grip was released. But yes, so Cross Purposes. Interesting fact about this, that the front cover, which has an angel's wings on fire, was used by, I think it's ZZ Top. I read somewhere that it was used by another band. It's underrated. So Tony Martin on guitars, on vocals, Tony Iommi on guitars, Geezer Butler on bass. So Geezer Butler comes back, and we lose Cozy Powell, not because he died later than that, but we lose Cozy Powell for Bobby Rondinelli on drums, and Jeff Nichols still says on keyboard. So he's one of the sort of like backbones of them. It's an astonishingly good album. A lot of people who like the Martin era albums say this is their favorite. I can see why. And we'll be doing a review of it in a few weeks' time, so not too much of it now because I want to save it for the episode. But it is astonishingly good for the time it was released. To little to no fanfare. You know, it's it feels like an end of an era album, though it isn't. It doesn't feel rushed. It feels the trifactor for me. So, you know, Headless Cross, TYR, and Cross Purposes are just an immaculate trivium, or whatever it is, whatever the word is. I can't think what it is. Triumvirate? Is it triumvirate? Of albums. And then we get to what I would call the weaker album of all of them. And it's not because it's badly produced. It's not because this is I originally listened. I've got the original version before it was remixed by Tony Iommi, and I think it lets this is the album that lets the band down slightly. It's not anyone's particular fault. I think it's the label issues. This has got a track on it with Ice-T on it. It just seems wrong to me. There was a lot of those crossover things going on then. You know, Run DMC and Anthrax and all that kind of stuff. I just think it was a misguided call. That it has got some absolute bangers on it. Now the lineup is Tony Iommi on guitar again, as you would expect. Neil Murray on bass, brilliant. Cozy Powell on drums, he's back again. Tony Martin on vocals, and Jeff Nichols on keyboards. So we go back to the Headless Cross TYR lineup, but that doesn't save it. It's got a hokey cover. I don't know what it's, some kind of cartoon thing going on. And this is the track listing. So The Illusion of Power, Get a Grip, Can't get close enough. Shaking off the chains. I don't want to cry for you. So I won't cry for you, sorry. Guilty as hell. Sick and tired. Rusty Angels. Forbidden. Kiss of Death. And long Loser Gets It All. It's not an album that I genuinely head back to very often. Not because, as I said, it's not because it's badly produced. It's just really not my cup of tea. And I think now that Tony has remixed it, it does sound a lot better. So I'm just putting the stuff back in the box. It does sound a lot better. So it has a heavier, more dynamic sound across across the speakers, because the other one was a bit flat, and I think it was the end of an era, and record label was, again, I'll discuss this later on, but the record label was being manipulative. They wanted them to do things they didn't want to do. They did it, and to be honest, I think just to get out of finish the contract probably with IRS Records, and shamefully, it feels like that. It feels like this do this to get rid of it kind of album. I mean, it's got the Masters of Metal on it. It's got Iommi and Martin and Powell and Murray and Nichols' touch on it. It is brilliant, but it's in spots, but it's essentially for me the weaker of the four. Now that's again, it's a big call. You might think it's your favourite, and if it does, well, that's wonderful. But for me, it just feels a bit thin. I think it's what gives the Martin era name a bit of a tarnish, because people listen to that and haven't listened to, the brilliance of Headless Cross or TYR, all the depth and dynamism of Cross Purposes. Now, the book that it comes with. Now we're going to talk about the book. It opens up. It's got all the different performers on it, all the side notes, all the label names, people on the label. And then it gives you a lovely prologue, a little history of Headless Cross, some nice artwork for the posters, about the record label. I found out, I didn't know this, but IRS made a heavy metal label, part of their label, just for Black Sabbath, which I think was pretty good. I didn't know that, which opened my eyes. I mean, and there's lots of fantastic quotes here. Like Cozy Powell says, I think it was perfect for me. I think the style of drumming that I played suits the band well anyway. I don't find any problems with the numbers. This is talking about Headless Cross, because a lot of people were like, "Oh, this isn't really Sabbath. It doesn't feel like Sabbath." That was what the sort of initial outcry about the album was. And again, don't listen to this. Go back and listen after me. Go back and listen to the episode, and you'll get my take on it. Another quote is that Iommi writes giant, rousing power chord anthems, and Martin wraps a colossal vocal around them. Ian Holton, Kerrang. Now, that is a fantastic quote. I love Kerrang. It's the Bible. It was the Bible when I was growing up. It's really nice. It's got this tour poster art in it. It's okay. Here, I was doing a record. I recall when I know what I was doing. Sorry, blah blah. Read again. I recall when recording Where Death Calls, and Cozy Powell stopped playing, as I said earlier, mid-recording, and shouted, "Do you think there's enough death in this one? I think it needs more death," and then dropped back onto the track and finished it off. But the name Headless Cross comes from a place near Birmingham, which was wiped out by the plague in the Middle Ages. Wow. See, I didn't know. I'm sorry about the stumbling at the beginning of that sentence, because I was reading the last bit of the sentence was from the previous page. See, rookie error. Iommi and Martin are a writing partnership to be reckoned with. They keep tunes interesting in clever nuances, twisting riffs, and this way and that, and as the mood takes them. Kerrang. So brilliant, right? I got Brian May to play on the solo of When Death Calls. He came down a lot when we were recording, sat in the studio and talked away. He just improvised because he'd only heard it the first time right there and then. Now, there is a genius. If someone can just improvise a solo like there and then and go, "I'm going off and get a cup of tea now," that's a genius for you. But so it's lots of quotes. I love lots of little quotes. There's one here from Neil Murray. It was very simple. They had recorded the album, and I did what I want to get involved. I didn't want to get involved with the tour, so we didn't tour. When I saw, I believe when I saw them at Hands of Odeon, I don't think Neil Murray was on bass, but I could be wrong. lots and lots of questions. Lovely posters here. It's a beautiful book. There's a copy of Kerrang, which I've still got with Tony Iommi on the front cover, advertising Headless Cross, Sabbath and the Headless Cross from April the 8th, 1989. It cost 95p. Isn't that wonderful? Wouldn't even get a page for that now. Number 233, if those guys that have it want to go and find their copy or want to buy a copy. Mine is in rather bad condition. Lots of photo shoots with the great Cozy Pal. Metal Hammer with Iommi on the front. I've got that as well. That's issue number 15. Can you believe it? Volume 4. That was £1.75. I remember Metal Hammer being really expensive because it was much thicker and it came out a little bit less. This was August the 7th of 1989. And it says Black Sabbath, the legend fight back. And it's got White Lion and Rothschild and Skid Row and Lee Aaron and Poison. That tells you the time of era that the band was playing in, really. It's a beautiful book. If you could get yourself lost in this. So like here, TYR is actually pronounced Tear, T-E-R. I always say T-Y-R. Probably should say Tear. Anyway. See, Black Sabbath back in business, doing what they do best. Uncompromising, powerful works of music as permanent and immutable as rock itself. The album builds on the foundations laid by the successful and much praised Headless Cross album on the tour of '89, which saw the band reclaiming territories they had lost in visiting in recent years. Yes, Headless Cross was a success. It wasn't a success in the kind of levels that, say, previous Sabbath albums were, but it was a success. And this box set went to number 1 recently in the UK rock charts and in heavy metal charts, and I think that is just wonderful and an absolute boon and what Tony really deserves, what he really deserves. The artwork is very beautiful in TYR. It's sort of Celtic imagery. It's all Vikings and stuff like that, which I absolutely adore. And Cozy Pal says, I certainly consider it to be one of the strongest Black Sabbath albums ever. And I generally would say that it's the truth. I think the Martin era albums outside of Forbidden have this sort of sense of, they feel well made. And I would love to be able to get hold of an initial copy of Headless Cross that's before the remasters and see what the difference is. And the same with Cross Purposes and TYR. I'd like to do that. Might one day try and hunt them down. I keep trying, but they're very hard to get hold of. An original copy of Headless Cross is like $300. Maybe now this box set's out, it won't be as expensive. I don't know. Hopefully that might bring the price down. I mean, even Tony Martin himself said he didn't have a copy of it, which is crazy. Now, what was I going? Oh yes. So I just think that it's got a really meaty, thick and polished and heavy and mysterious feel to these 3 albums in this box set. The ones are just TYR, Headless Cross, and Cross Purposes. Now, this box set, it took a long time to come out because of legal wranglings with Ozzy and his wife and the name of Black Sabbath and all this kind of stuff. Both Tonys have been trying to work on this since Dio's funeral. When they met up at Dio's funeral, they were like, we should do this. And but they just couldn't because of legal wranglings. And he sort of hinted at it in the interview, if you listen back, that they were looking at it, getting a box set coming out soon. And as soon as I heard it, the date it was going to be released, I was so excited that I think I jumped up and down. Anyway, TYR, beautiful. I had that on cassette, by the way. I had it on vinyl and cassette. I had the picture disc of it as well. Long gone, sadly. I didn't look after my records as well as I did as a teenager as I do now. Lovely pictures of the tour program, the great posters of where they played, like they played at... So when did they play? They played at Hampstead Odeon 8th of September in 1990. I completely couldn't go. I just couldn't go, which is a real shame. And then there's an intermission, so it talks about the in-between years, the band stable, like the lineup stability, about Dio's sort of in and out thing, This is the quote here. I guess we were both at the point in our careers when it was advantageous for us to do this. I'm not going to try and hide that when he did James Dio. So he wanted to leave as well, right? It is what it is. Another quote here. I knew there'd be a few dealings in the past where we didn't get on, but I thought we could still give him a try. They'd fallen out before, and we got back together. It was much the same, but they didn't see eye to eye a lot. The stuff was It was a strange situation. That's the tone. I was talking about Dio. Now, cross purposes that we've talked about again. Oh man, there's a poster here in the book for cross purposes with Black Sabbath, special guests Motorhead and Morbid Angel. Oh my god, can you imagine that as a lineup? Wow. Okay. Cross purposes live, which I don't actually have. I do have, but mine's on a VHS, so I can't play it. Look at this. They're playing with Cathedral and Godspeed and Hammersmith Labatt's Apollo when they changed its name. Ugh, God. It was in 1994. That was. Forbidden. Yes, here we go. Forbidden was built. It was 95. I find this a fascinating. There's a real sadness behind this album, and I think that's why it feels ever so slightly disjointed to me. I really do feel that way. Yeah. It was recorded in 10 days. It's quite quick. As I said before earlier, they were pushed into recording with Ice-T on the opening track to the album. Where was it? Illusion of Power. There was a moment in it where apparently the record company came to Tony Iommi and said, "Can we get Cozy Powell play a bit more like his drums a bit more hip hop?" And I can imagine that conversation where he says, quote, there was no way I was going to tell Cozy Powell, a player of Cozy Powell's ability and experience, to play hip hop rhythms. He was never going to do it. And you can see the tension then. Recorded in 10 days. It was slated in the press. It only sold 21,000 copies on its first release weekend in America, and all over 191,000 copies in the US, which is a very small amount when you consider the numbers that they were pushing out with other albums. So, that's probably down to the fact that the press slated it, which is a shame because it's not our job to do it. I consider myself a member of the music press, and I do believe that you should never be negative. You should be always constructive. If you can't think of a good constructive thing to say, don't say anything at all, because you're not there with your guitar in your hand, and you're not there recording that music, that painful experience to create art. It's why I haven't done a Ghost episode yet. I really haven't done one. People have asked me. I'm not doing one because I will only be negative, and I don't want to be. It's not in my nature to be completely and utterly negative. It just doesn't feel good to me. Not that negativity isn't a positivity as well, because it gives you feedback, but there's a point where it becomes spiteful and I don't know, it just doesn't help anyone really. Anyway, that aside, that's the box set. Okay, this book is beautiful. I mean, there's so many quotes. I could put hundreds of quotes. I've probably not even got the best quotes out of it, to be honest. There's so much in here. You could keep looking. There's a lovely, fantastic epilogue section. And it says here, a history would tell that Forbidden would be the last Black Sabbath studio album in 1995 with an extensive back catalogue spanning 25 years. Because that's another sad thing, is that up until 13 came out, that was Sabbath's final album. And to finish it on Forbidden I think is a bit of a shame, a bit sad. Finishing on Cross Purposes, for instance, would have been an amazing way to go. If that was never going to be any more Sabbath albums ever again, that would be the way to go. It wasn't until many years later till they reformed with the original lineup and played and wrote 13 and went on tour again they could finally sign off as the greats they are. But let's not forget the fantastic Ronnie James Dio era years. Not my favorite years, but Heaven and Hell is up there in one of the greatest albums of all time. Black Headless Cross, TYR, Cross Purposes, just brilliant. Let's not forget them. Aussie Black Sabbath is not predominantly just Aussie. He's the biggest and loudest of them. It's not just Aussie, and that's what makes this band so brilliant. And Tony Iommi's tenacity to not let go, not drop the name. I mean, at one point they did consider changing the name when Headless Cross was being thought of. They were going to not call themselves Black Sabbath at one point. But like Tony Martin said, he said, "Why would you do that? That's cheapening its heritage, and you're trying to start again from scratch, and people aren't going to take you seriously." And it's hard enough as it is in the era of music they were in. When R&B and hip hop and soulless, $million selling records like Jive Bunny and all that horrendous rubbish was being poured it down our throats and into our eyes and in our ears by the record companies, who were losing the will to want to create great art because it was cheaper to mass produce soap opera stars writing and singing second grade pop songs than it was to spend some money and create wonderful art like Headless Cross and TYR and Cross Purposes and Pyromania and Hysteria and all those quite sort of 80s, and Painkiller and Brave New World, all those sort of late 80s, early 90s albums that were just superb. They were, they were well made, and it took more time, and time is money in the studio, and I don't think they wanted to spend that kind of money. Then it moved on. So, there isn't just Aussie. Do get yourself your ears around this. You don't have to go out and spend. I think I spent collectively about 450 Australian dollars on the 2 box sets. You don't have to do that. No, sorry, I didn't spend that much. I bought another album with it as well, Killing Joke Live Record Store Day. So it was about 390 or something like that for the 2. If you're going to grab one, doesn't matter which medium you get it in, vinyl or CD, as long as you can play it. But if you have it, not into collecting or having, solid media, it's available on every streaming site there is. So go there and play them in order, in my opinion. Play them in order. All the Tony Martin era albums, play them in order. Okay? If you can, start with 1987's The Eternal Idol. There's a whole sort of story behind that one, but that's a different ball game. Then do Headless Cross, then Tear, then Cross Purposes, and then Forbidden. Okay? And do it that way, and hear the progression of the band and the pinnacle. Because Eternal Idol is not one of my favorites, and it feels it's a little bit. There's a really interesting story between Dio and Martin on this thing. So that one there, and then get into its full rocking power of Headless Cross and move on, because I think that's the way to do it, and you'll really enjoy it. I mean, you could do it in any order you want, I suppose, but that's the way I would do it, and that's why I do it every time, just because it's a great way of hearing one of the best vocalists in music truly grow in the band. Okay, that's enough for me. That's enough for me yabbering about this fantastic box set and the music that contains inside it. In a few weeks' time, I will do Cross Purposes, and I may even do Forbidden. Now I've got the remix version of it. You never know. But definitely going to do Cross Purposes because it's just brilliant. That's enough for me gabbling on. I hope you've enjoyed that. I don't normally just do things like that. I find it a bit tricky to sort of. I don't want to just talk about solid boxes and things you can't see, because this is a audio medium, by the way. You know that you're not seeing it. But there are lots of videos on YouTube about unboxing of this particular wonderful box set. So do go and look at that as well. You can get it in all good record stores, all good music suppliers. I think they even, all the big main high street stores in Australia particularly, you can get it. That'll be the same in the UK and in the US and in Europe. Get it, love it, listen to it again, keep listening to it, and hope it sort of enthralls you as much as it did me. Bye for now, guys.
Hey, folks, I'm Mark Maron from the WTF Podcast, and this episode is brought to you by Kleenex Ultra Soft Tissues, your ally to help tackle your allergy symptoms this season. I love the change of seasons, but nobody loves pollen and all those other things floating in the air that make you sneeze during this nice weather. Kleenex Ultra Soft Tissues are hypoallergenic and allergist approved, so fight back against watery eyes and runny noses without worrying about irritating your skin. For this allergy season, grab Kleenex and face allergies head on.